Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. I was in the middle of reviewing a German to English technical brief when my phone buzzed with my sister's name. I let it ring once, twice, picked it up. I already knew what she wanted. "Hey, Dahlia," she started, too chipper. "So, Bryce is being honored at this gala thing next weekend. It's a big deal. His firm is one of the main sponsors now. They're doing it for the Regional Arts Foundation. It'd mean a lot if you came, family support and all." Family support. That phrase always felt like a leash with perfume sprayed on it. My name's Dahlia Freeman. I'm 36, I live in Reston, Virginia, and I work as a senior translator for a private contractor tied to the state's cybersecurity office. Basically, I decode boring but important stuff from languages most people barely speak. I don't talk about it, not even with my family, especially not with Bryce. He's the kind of guy who wears tailored suits to his backyard. Real estate logistics executive. Flashy in public, smug in private, always has some backhanded comment about my secret government word puzzles. I told my sister I'd think about it. Then I spent the next hour pressing a plain navy dress and mapping the exits of the hotel ballroom in my head. Before we keep going, quick note. Before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? Bryce had made a joke a few months back while on the phone in the den. I'd stopped by to drop off a box of books my niece had left at my place. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I paused when I heard him say, Yeah, just gotta time the toast right. Land the message before the buzz kicks in." Then he laughed, said something about priming the table. I figured he was just talking about a speech, a dumb Bryceism. Still, something about it stuck. Not the words, really, the tone. Too calculated. I didn't RSVP right away, but by Thursday, my sister called again. "Mom's coming. Bryce's boss is flying in. I don't want to be the only one there without family." So I said fine. The night of the gala, I parked 2 blocks away. Walked in with no makeup, just some lip gloss and that navy dress. I clipped my ID into my coat pocket. Not that anyone would care, but I liked knowing it was there. A reminder, I belonged to a world none of these people saw. I stepped into that hotel ballroom, already counting down the minutes until I could leave. I slipped past the coat check, found my table, and took the outer seat, nearest the aisle, farthest from the stage. The room buzzed with fake laughter and too much cologne. White lights caught on the crystal glasses, like everything wanted to sparkle at once. I tucked my hands under the table. Bryce was already working the room, shaking hands, doing that whole polished savior of the community bit. I caught my sister near the bar, smiling too wide, wine glass clutched like armor. Her eyes flicked over to me, softening for a second. I nodded. That was enough. Eventually, everyone was called to take their seats. The MC rattled off the usual donation stats and celebrating our mission fluff. Then came the real reason we were here. Bryce Levington, Executive of the Year. Cue standing ovation. He strolled to the podium like he owned the floor, adjusted the mic, and gave the crowd that slow, charming grin. "My wife told me to keep it short," he started. "So if this goes long, blame the open bar." Polite chuckles. He launched into a story about building warehouse routes through hurricane zones and optimizing cultural investments. I didn't even blink. I'd heard the buzzwords before. They meant nothing. Logistics wrapped in velvet. Then he turned to our table and said, "And of course, I have to thank my family, including my brilliant sister-in-law Dahlia, who's out here doing very important government contractor work. She's great with crossword puzzles, not so much with people. Laughter, not cruel, not biting, just effortless. They didn't know better." He smiled like it was harmless, like we were all just poking fun. I smiled too, small, controlled. I didn't look at him. I didn't flinch. I just started scanning the room. Top left corner, logistics consultant from Monroe Pacific, Bryce's boss. Dark gray suit, deep in conversation with a donor in a red dress. Half a smile, eyes twitching toward the stage. Didn't look engaged. Far right, a server moved past our table again. I'd seen him earlier, but now he was looping back. Same tray, same angle, same rhythm. 3 steps, pause, check the Levington table, adjust tray, repeat. Most servers flowed. This guy moved like he was following instructions someone wrote for him in a hurry. I tracked his eyes. They kept darting toward Bryce's private table, not ours. The smaller one behind it, reserved for select guests. 4 glasses, 3 people. Something in my chest tightened. I leaned forward slightly, catching the tail end of a movement. One glass got swapped, smooth and subtle. from the back of the tray to the front. Barely noticeable, unless you knew what it looked like when someone broke sequence. He adjusted his grip, wiped his palm on his apron, eyes forward. No smile. I didn't react. Not yet. Instead, I looked back at the consultant. Bryce's boss. His hand was already lifting a drink. Not the swapped one, but it made my skin buzz. The GALA noise dimmed in my head. Background voices blurred, just ambient clutter. That flicker of misalignment, of something not adding up, that was what I'd been trained for. Not in a dramatic way. Just patterns, micro-behaviors, timing. A laugh rang out from the next table. The consultant leaned in toward the donor again, glass now resting by his right elbow, unattended. The server turned, took 3 steps toward that table, and hesitated. Too long. He looked left, then right, shifted his weight. That's when I knew. It wasn't nerves. It wasn't sloppy service. It was a delay in execution. His eyes went back to the consultant's drink, like he wasn't sure if the delivery window was still open. I reached for my water, tilted it just enough to track the glass behind it. Thin stem. Slight condensation difference. Maybe the server had chilled it more, maybe not. But something in the weight of that pause made everything else go quiet. This wasn't about me, not anymore. And Bryce, who was still on stage cracking a story about shipping delays and fancy French wine arriving in Arkansas, had no idea what was moving right under his nose. But I did. The server angled toward the logistics consultant's table again. Tray balanced, eyes narrowed like he was pushing himself through it. No backup, no other server near him. Just him, the drink, and a straight line. I stood, not fast, not loud, just enough to move with the room's rhythm. 2 steps to the right, another to clear a couple heels poking from under the tablecloth. The tray was maybe 6 feet away from landing. I closed the gap. The consultant had just finished laughing at something the donor said. His hand lifted, instinctively reaching for the glass being offered. I stepped in. "Don't sip that," I said, low enough for only him. "Something's off." He froze, eyes flicking to me. Fast recognition. His expression didn't shift, didn't blink, but his hand dropped an inch. "Freeman?" he said under his breath. "Yeah," I replied. "From Brussels 3 years ago? Linguistics unit." He paused a beat. Then he set the glass on the table, didn't touch it again. Without a word, he raised 2 fingers subtly in the direction of the ballroom entrance. A man in a dark suit peeled away from the wall, heading toward us like a breeze nobody else noticed. Tight shoulders, coiled jaw. Private security, trained, discreet. The server stood there, frozen between his next move and mine. I tilted my head toward the consultant. "Watch his eyes," I murmured. The security man approached, leaned close to the consultant. The consultant spoke quietly. "This is Dahlia Freeman, clearance-level translator, overseas contractor. She just flagged the drink." The security guy didn't flinch. He nodded once at me. "What did you see?" Glass was swapped from back to front of the tray. Minor condensation shift. Timing didn't line up with the other rotations. He stalled before delivery, looked for a go signal. Didn't get one. "Anyone else involved?" "Not clear yet." He tapped his earpiece, then said, "Don't move," to the server, just loud enough for him to hear. The server looked like he might bolt, but 2 more men appeared behind him. Quiet, calm, casual, but blocking every path out. One of them stepped in. "Sir, we're going to need to have a word with you in the back," he said, voice calm like they were talking about spilled champagne. The server nodded once, too quick. He was sweating now. They peeled him off the floor smooth as silk, no drama. Most of the crowd didn't even glance up. I started to step back toward my table, but a woman in a black pantsuit touched my arm. "Ms. Freeman?" She flashed a badge. "Internal security, Monroe Pacific." "Come with me, please," she said. I didn't argue. We cut left, past the ballroom divider wall. Behind it was a narrow service hallway with a staff table, 2 folding chairs, and a steel pitcher of lukewarm coffee. She motioned for me to sit. I didn't. "You flagged a drink?" she said. "I flagged a process," I replied. The delivery was off. Timing, posture, tray behavior, glass was moved, something was meant to be in it. "Could you identify which?" I nodded. "Front right stem, second from the left when approached." "I assume you tagged it." We did. She checked something on her phone, then looked back up. "Appreciate your discretion." I didn't want to make a scene. You didn't. Footsteps echoed from the hallway. The consultant passed by, flanked by another pair of men. He glanced toward me, gave the faintest nod. I returned it. The woman tapped something into her phone, then said, "You'll be contacted if we need a written statement." "I'll be available." When I stepped back into the ballroom, the lighting hadn't changed. Music still flowed, light jazz from a string quartet tucked in the corner. But the rhythm of the room had shifted. A twitch in the air, a subtle vacuum behind the conversations. That's when I saw Bryce, still laughing, still holding court at the head table. He had no clue yet. Not until he glanced toward the commotion behind the donor seating, where two plainclothes agents were now escorting the logistics consultant's personal aide out of the side door. Bryce's laugh cut mid-word. His eyes followed the exit. He turned pale, not white, just off, like a wall had slipped sideways inside him, and he didn't know which way gravity was pulling anymore. He looked at me. I held his gaze, didn't smile, didn't nod. Then I walked back to my seat and sat down like nothing happened. The string quartet kept playing, but their tempo was off, like even they could feel something had slipped under the floorboards. I sat still. My hands were folded in my lap, and I didn't blink as another man in a dark suit stepped up to the logistics consultant's boss, Bryce's boss, near the bar. He leaned in, said something barely audible. The man froze, then nodded once, like he'd been waiting for it. No cuffs yet. Not right away. Just a polite arm on his shoulder as they guided him out of sight. A ripple ran through the room, silent but visible. A few people noticed. Most were still too busy sipping overpriced cocktails and smiling at cameras. Bryce, though, he noticed. He turned back toward the head table, clapped a little too hard at someone's joke, then reached for his water glass. His hand was shaking. Barely, but I saw it. Another server was taken aside near the back, not dragged, not shouted at. Just pulled out of place like a loose thread being removed from a suit. Two men in gray suits followed behind them with slow, careful steps. I heard one guest say, "Did someone faint?" Another replied, "Security drill, maybe?" The lies started before the truth had even arrived. And then Bryce moved. He stepped around the end of the table like he was just stretching his legs. Nobody stopped him. He came straight toward me, face tight, smile gone, jaw clenched like he was chewing glass. He leaned down, one hand on the back of my chair. "What did you do?" he whispered. I didn't turn my head, just said, calm and steady, "I saw something dangerous and said so." He exhaled hard, like I'd hit him. Then he tried to cover it up with a chuckle, glancing around like we were just having a family chat. But I could see the sweat starting to form at his temples. That's when the music stuttered. Not a full stop. More like someone dropped a bow mid-song and scrambled to catch the beat again. Eyes started to shift. Phones lifted. A couple of people near the stage began recording. Camera flashes popped. First one, then three more. Not paparazzi level, but enough to start a storm. The logistics consultant reappeared near the ballroom entrance, this time flanked by two federal agents, suits with earpieces, no logos, no names. One on each side, walking him out with hands loosely cuffed in front. He didn't resist, didn't hang his head. Just walked like a man who'd been expecting this longer than he admitted. As they passed me, he looked over and gave the faintest nod. That same quiet recognition from before. It wasn't gratitude, it was acknowledgement, confirmation. I nodded back. Nothing more. A woman near the dessert table gasped. A few others stood up to see better. One guy said, "Is this part of the program?" The donor in red clutched her pearls like it was a play, and she didn't know when to applaud. Then came the breaking point. A second aide, this one tied to Monroe Pacific's donor relations, was quietly cuffed near the sponsor banners. No warning, just two agents flanking him, one hand behind his back, another guiding him forward. Bryce's face cracked. Not fully, not yet, but his lips parted slightly, eyes going glassy, his posture deflated by an inch. I watched it happen like watching a bottle lose pressure. He turned back to me, eyes full of panic behind that smug mask that no longer fit. "You don't know what you've done," he muttered. I tilted my head. "No, Bryce, and you don't." Someone from the press moved toward the stage. Security stopped her. More guests pulled out their phones. My sister stood frozen by the bar, wine glass in hand, staring at Bryce like she didn't know who she married. The music stopped for real this time. All eyes turned toward the room's center. What had started as a polished gala now felt like a glass tower mid-collapse, still standing, but groaning from the weight. Bryce backed away from me slowly. like I was radioactive. And in a way, I was. Or maybe he was. Hard to tell now. His future didn't fall in one loud crash. It just sagged, visibly, like a balloon with a slow leak. He stood there, watching the exits, the cameras, the agents, watching his world shrink. I didn't move, didn't gloat. I just sat there, still as stone, and let him see it all come undone. The next morning, I showed up at my sister's house at exactly 10, same as we'd planned earlier that week. Brunch. Family thing. No one had canceled. The front door was cracked open like always. I walked in without knocking. Bryce's voice hit me before I even got my shoes off. So here's the heat map. Red zones show idle trucks past 72 hours. We trimmed that down by 38% last quarter. He was in the dining room, standing beside a folding easel, flipping through laminated charts like he was still on a conference call. He hadn't even changed out of the gala suit. Just removed the tie, sleeves rolled up. Like nothing had happened. My mother sat at the table nodding like he was reading scripture. My uncle and his wife leaned forward, squinting at some pie chart like they actually understood it. I walked into the room. No one looked surprised to see me. "Dahlia," my mom said, "you just missed the big reveal. Bryce fixed the whole warehouse system. He's got national-level people watching him now. We're so proud." Bryce turned to me, smiled with all teeth. "And Dahlia's still solving word puzzles for a paycheck, huh?" A soft laugh drifted around the table. My sister didn't join in. She was setting the last plate down. Quiche, fruit, toast, coffee. Her hands moved slower than usual. She didn't look at me, but she didn't look at him either. I pulled out the chair farthest from the easel and sat down. "Orange juice?" she asked, finally meeting my eyes. "Sure," I said. She poured. Bryce kept talking. "Honestly, I might need to hire someone to rework the donor logistics, now that we're expanding. Some real brains behind it this time. Not just translation gigs, no offense." "None taken," I said. I buttered a slice of toast, kept my face neutral. Let the heat rise and pass. It wasn't new, just louder today, forced. He clicked to the next slide like he needed proof he still had control. "See the spike? That's from the Georgia warehouse. All optimized, all above board." I chewed my food slow. My mother said something about how proud she was again. Someone asked about internships. Bryce soaked it all in like he hadn't watched his boss get arrested less than 12 hours ago. My sister finally sat beside me. "Eggs okay?" she asked softly. "They're good," I said. She looked down, pressing her napkin into her lap with both hands like she was grounding herself. The conversation buzzed around us. I heard it, but it didn't touch me. Bryce talked more. The more he talked, the more desperate it sounded, almost manic. He pointed to another chart, made a joke about data not lying. No one mentioned the GALA. Not a word. Not the security, not the consultant, not the glass. Like the entire night had been vacuumed out of the timeline and replaced with his damn color-coded slides. But his voice cracked once, barely. Just a hitch when he said next phase. That was the only real thing he gave away. I finished my plate, wiped my mouth, and stood. My sister's head turned toward me instantly. "You're leaving?" she asked. "Yeah, I've got work," I said. She looked like she wanted to say something else. Her mouth opened, then closed again. I stepped around Bryce without looking at him. "Thanks for brunch," I said to no one in particular. As I walked toward the door, he called out, "Let me know if you ever want a real job, Dahlia." "I've got interns who need supervision." I didn't stop, didn't answer. I let the screen door slam behind me. I didn't go home right away. I drove to a parking lot behind the library, killed the engine, and sat there with the windows cracked, just breathing. That brunch felt like walking through a set staged for denial. Plates clinked, words floated, but underneath it all was something sharp and waiting. And I couldn't shake the itch in my chest, that feeling when something's trying to surface. So I let it. I closed my eyes, leaned back, and replayed the sounds that stuck. Make sure the special bottle goes to me direct. With the ribbon. I remembered that clear as day. A month ago. Bryce on the phone in his office, back turned, half laughing like he was making some cute inside joke. I'd come over to drop off old storage bins for my niece's art supplies. The door had been open. Direct, with the ribbon. At the time, I assumed it was a wine thing, something pretentious for a donor box. But now, After that drink switch at the gala, the server stalling, and the arrests, it wasn't sitting like a wine thing anymore. I opened my glove box and pulled out the small black notebook I used for field observations when I traveled. Pages mostly blank now, but I needed the weight of it in my hands. I started flipping through my mental archive. 2 weeks ago, that delivery van idling out back of Bryce's office building at 6 a.m., engine off, windows up, said cultural logistics on the side. Didn't think much of it then. Now it ticked louder. 3 days before the gala, Bryce came into my sister's kitchen from the garage carrying a white gift bag. Inside was a tall bottle wrapped in that soft red velvet paper they use at duty-free stores. I remember because I tossed the bag and found the crushed ribbon in the trash. It was knotted oddly, not a bow, a twist and tuck, like it marked something. And then I heard it again in my head. Another line Bryce had tossed out once during one of his smug little family rants. Velvet paperwork. He'd laughed at himself like it was clever. That's not a thing people say. But in my world, velvet's a term we sometimes use for unofficial cargo, the kind of items that need shielding. Not always illegal, but meant to fly low under standard customs. Velvet paperwork, special bottle, private ribbon. No way that drink was about poisoning someone. It wasn't personal. It was procedural. Something was being moved through the gala. Something disguised as a gift, rerouted to a specific person, bypassing normal checks. And that consultant's aide being cuffed? That sealed it. He wasn't the threat. He was the channel. I sat up straighter and pulled out my phone, scrolled until I found the number. Tamara Bell, Internal Review, Contractor Division. She owed me a favor, and more importantly, she knew how to listen without talking. She picked up after the second ring. Freeman? Yeah, I said. This is quiet, right? Always. I've got 4 phrases for you. Ready? A pause, then go. Special delivery, private route, velvet paperwork, timing the toast. Another pause, this one longer. Then, where did this come from? Family Gala, Bryce Levington. His consultant's aide got cuffed. There was a drink switch, but I don't think that was the point. I think it was a marker. You're saying this was a flagged exchange? I'm saying this looked like cover for movement. Something boxed as a donor bottle, redirected through event logistics, under the radar. She didn't speak for almost 10 seconds. Then, flat and quiet, stay alert. We may be sitting on something big. I hung up and stared at the sky through the windshield. Clouds drifted slow and wide, like nothing urgent existed. But I knew better. Something had shifted, not just in Bryce's life, in mine too. I wasn't a bystander anymore. I was the only one who saw the ribbon. I drove straight back to the gala venue, didn't call anyone, didn't text, just parked 2 blocks down, walked up the staff entrance, and flashed my badge to the guy checking exits. He barely looked at it before waving me in. The ballroom was quieter now, post-event cleanup in full swing. Servers cleared half-drunk wine glasses. Someone dragged a tablecloth across the floor. The music had stopped, but the buzz hadn't. I wasn't there to ask questions. I just needed to be close to the noise. I slipped past the caterer's cart, ducked through the side door labeled staff only, and stood by a narrow hallway lined with crates and folding chairs. That's when I heard them. 2 men just around the corner, voices low but sharp. One leaned against the wall, the other pacing slow. I didn't have to see their faces to know one of them was Bryce's boss's aide, slick voice, always too polished. The other sounded corporate, with that flat, over-rehearsed tone people use when they think everyone's on the same team. We keep using museum access through the South Wing, the aide said. It's clean, unmonitored. That's still flagged in 2 systems, the liaison replied. You need to bury it better. We've pivoted before. If they start sniffing, we pivot through the museum wing. Same dock, different paperwork. My lungs locked. They said it like they'd done it 100 times. The aide kept going. Cover donors are clean. All mid-tier, arts-based, no cross-checks with inventory. They donate, we route through their names, cycle the paperwork through velvet channels. It clears customs twice before anyone's even awake. The liaison laughed, quiet and bitter. You're playing with procurement law. No one's playing, we're delivering. You sure your inside's still solid? That made my blood go cold. The aide answered too fast. Levington's got it locked. This wouldn't move a foot without him. Levington, I didn't flinch, didn't blink, just melted back 2 steps, close enough to the wall to feel the drywall on my shoulder. They kept talking, but I didn't need more. That was it. Ghost shipments, donor covers, museum access. Procurement scam dressed up as community investment. They were using public venues, art shows, and donor names to move whatever the hell they wanted. Probably high-value, untracked inventory under the radar. And Bryce wasn't just connected. He was in it. Inside man. Logistics side. Probably the one routing the warehouse transfers. All those graphs he bragged about. I bet half of them were hiding altered shipments. I stayed still for another minute, heart kicking steady. No sound, no sudden moves. Just the hallway, the hum of fluorescent lights, and two men talking about federal crimes like they were planning brunch. Eventually, they moved off down the hall toward the service elevator. I waited 10 more seconds before stepping back through the door to the ballroom. The lights were brighter now, cleanup crew half done. Someone dropped a tray and cursed under their breath. Nothing dramatic. I walked along the back wall, steady steps, eyes low. I'd heard enough, not guesses, not suspicions, not hunches. Proof. Bryce was part of it, not adjacent, not just caught in the gears. He built some of the machine, and that meant whatever came next wasn't speculation. It was happening, with or without me. I found a quiet corner and stood still for a moment, pressing 2 fingers into my temple, breathing deep until my pulse backed off just enough to hear again. Then I straightened my shoulders and walked back into the room like I hadn't just watched a man bury his own future behind drywall and shipping codes. Because I had. And I knew exactly what it meant. I was leaving a coffee shop near the transit center when I saw him. Bryce, leaning against my car like he belonged there, like this was just a chat we hadn't gotten around to. He looked rough. Shirt untucked, sleeves wrinkled, jaw unshaven. No suit, no charts, no spotlight. I stopped a few feet short. "You have 2 minutes." He stepped off the car like he was grateful just to be seen. "I didn't know how deep it went," he said. "I swear, Dahlia, I thought it was just donor fluff. Logistics favors, nothing real." I didn't move. I just watched him dig the hole with his mouth. "I mean, yeah, there were gray areas," he said, but no one said the word illegal. It was about streamlining, keeping things efficient, cutting red tape. "Stop talking like you're in a pitch meeting." He flinched, then nodded. Okay, look, I messed up. I trusted the wrong people. But you don't have to bring this to the finish line. Not like this." I crossed my arms. "You think this is about you?" "It's about my wife," he said, quick and desperate. "My daughter. Your niece, Dahlia. Do you really want her to grow up watching her dad get hauled off in cuffs? You want my face in the news?" I didn't answer. He stepped closer. "You think you're protecting your sister, but you're not. You're about to blow up her entire life. She didn't know anything. She's innocent. And you're going to drag her through hell just to, what? Be right?" My jaw tightened. He lowered his voice. "You don't owe me anything. I get it. You never liked me. You never respected me. Fine. But you love her. Don't pretend you don't." That one landed. I swallowed hard, looked away for half a second, just enough time for him to press again. "I'm begging you, don't push this. Don't turn it in. Let it die." And for a second, a real second, I almost caved. I pictured my sister at the brunch table, folding napkins like she was holding something fragile. I thought about our mom smiling at Bryce like he was the crown jewel of the family. I imagined the whispers at her job, the school drop-offs, the neighborhood gossip. He saw it in my face, leaned in like he was winning. "You can walk away," he said. "No one has to know." But then I remembered the drink. That glass, how close it came to being delivered. I remembered the server's eyes, the stutter in his movements, the swap, the pause, the aide talking about ghost shipments and cover donors like it was nothing. And I remembered Bryce, standing in the ballroom, clapping like he wasn't part of the collapse. I met his eyes. "You made your choices," I said. "I just noticed them." He blinked, like he hadn't expected me to cut through it that clean. "I didn't," he started. "No," I said. "You did. Every pivot, every reroute, every ribbon." He looked like he might throw up. "You're ruining everything," he whispered. "No," I said. "You already did." He staggered back a step, like the words physically hit him, put a hand to his face, fingers shaking, then dropped to the curb like his legs gave out. I watched him sit there with his head in his hands. Could have been real. Could have been an act. Honestly, I didn't care. I turned, walked to my car, and got in. didn't say another word, didn't look back. 3 mornings later, before the sun even came up, they knocked on Bryce's door. No sirens, no shouting. Just two unmarked SUVs, a federal warrant, and one calm voice on the porch asking for Mr. Levington. They gave him time to put on a jacket. My sister stood in the doorway in pajama pants and a hoodie, not saying a word. My niece slept through the whole thing. He didn't resist, just nodded and stepped forward with his hands open. By the time I poured my second cup of coffee that morning, his face was everywhere. News sites, local broadcast. A grainy photo from the GALA, flashing under the headline, Procurement Fraud Scheme Tied to Arts Donor Network. Local executive arrested. There were no details at first, just whispers. Logistics, contracts, falsified routes. One anchor mentioned use of cultural events to obscure material movement. Another brought up fraudulent donor pathways. I turned the volume down after that. Reporters showed up outside the courthouse by noon. Microphones, flashes, voices layered over each other. I walked past them with sunglasses on and didn't say a damn thing. Inside, it was quieter, stiffer. My sister sat in the second row, hands twisted in her lap, hair still damp like she hadn't had time to finish drying it. She looked straight ahead the whole time. Bryce came in cuffed but calm, like he thought posture could save him. He didn't look at her, not once. The judge read the charges flatly. Wire fraud, contract falsification, misuse of government delivery pathways, conspiracy to commit procurement fraud. Nothing dramatic. Just the list. His lawyer gave a last-minute statement, begging for leniency. Something about confusion and misleading partnerships. Said Bryce didn't orchestrate it, just approved things without full awareness. The prosecutor didn't buy it. Neither did the judge. Sentence came down clean and sharp. Multiple years. Federal prison. No parole. My sister didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She just nodded once, like she'd been preparing for this the whole time and didn't know what else to do with her hands. I didn't touch her, didn't hug her, just sat beside her, quiet, present. That was all she needed. After court, the cameras came for her. Mrs. Levington, were you aware of the fraud? Did your family benefit from the scheme? Is your husband guilty? She said nothing, just walked straight through them like they didn't exist. I followed her to the parking garage and stood by while she unlocked the car. She didn't ask me to ride with her. I didn't offer. That night, I went over to her place. The house was dim, dishes still in the sink, living room half tidy, like she'd started cleaning and gave up halfway through. I sat on the couch while my niece curled beside me, tired but restless. She looked up at me, her voice barely above a whisper. Why did Uncle Bryce cry when they took him? I brushed a hand over her hair, steady and slow. Because when the truth catches up to someone who's pretending, I said, it hurts. She nodded like that made sense, then curled closer and closed her eyes. My sister sat on the stairs, listening but didn't say a word. And I didn't say anything else. I got home around 9, kicked off my shoes, tossed my keys on the table, and didn't bother turning on the TV. The place was still. Not heavy or tense, just still. I liked it that way. No forced laughter, no background noise pretending to be peace, just space. Mine. I walked into the kitchen, filled the kettle, and set it on the burner. While it heated, I pulled out my notebook, the same one I kept in my glove box, pages half filled with old codes and clipped phrases from trips I barely talked about. I sat down at the kitchen table, pen in hand. For most of my life, silence had meant survival. You keep your head down, do your job, let the loud ones take credit while you make sure the building doesn't fall apart. That was the deal. Silence was patience. Sometimes it was dignity. But now it felt like something else. Something I owned. Not my sister, not my mother, not the men who filled rooms with their voices and forgot who was standing in the corner paying attention. My phone buzzed beside the notebook. A photo from my sister. Roast chicken, potatoes, a salad, 2-plate set. Caption read, "Still 7 p.m." I stared at it for a second, then typed back, "Yes." No emoji, no explanation. Just yes. The kettle started to whistle. I got up, poured the water, dropped a chamomile bag into a chipped mug I'd had since college, and sat back down. Steam curled in the air. Then I wrote one line in the notebook, slow and deliberate. The truth doesn't always get applause, but it lets you breathe. I closed the cover and slid it into the drawer next to my spare keys and a flashlight that hadn't worked in 5 years. The window was cracked open. The city breathed in through it, traffic in the distance, someone laughing on the sidewalk, a dog barking 3 streets over, alive, wide awake, and quiet in all the right ways. I didn't need a headline or a thank you. I had this, and finally, it fit.